All right. Good morning. Good morning. We're going to talk about a couple little basic things today, and you know what, we are in the midst of our busy time. Obviously merchants are getting ready for their holiday seasons right around the corner, so there's a lot of things going on. A couple things I wanted to address is one, we're reaching the end of the month, so whatever we need to do to button up your stuff, let's make sure. I know there's a handful of deals hanging out there to get finalized. Sometimes we need your help finalizing. A lot of times the agent's super involved with it, and other times you let us handle it on our end. So if our support calls you and we need you to intervene a little bit to get these deals finalized, let's make sure we do that. And you definitely want to make sure deals are finalized, especially when approved, because the merchant's going to get billed, kind of like your cell phone. If you get a cell phone and not make any calls, do you still get a bill? Of course. So let's make sure we don't cause any unrest for the merchant. And also, let's make sure that we want to talk about utilizing your tools back here, utilizing the team. We spend a lot of time and energy in making sure that we're here to support you, and we want to make sure that when we do this support things, especially during the sales process, that we handle it right. Obviously you're on the forefront, you're out working with the merchant, you're out building rapport, and you want to get your agent director involved. And there's the right way and the wrong way to hand that off. And one of the things that we're always going to make sure of is, when you bring us in to help you close the deal, what's one of the things that you want to make sure that you have when we get the statements before we present numbers? What's one of the most important things that we have from the merchant?
Did you say from the merchant?
Yeah, from the merchant. I think, Bob, did you say it?
A commitment.
Yeah.
Commitment, tie down. Very, very important. And what's funny is we see kind of trends, and I know it must be something in the air, something in the water. I don't get it, but it's just how life works. We see a lot of things going on recently where we'll get the statements in, and you want to help, especially when you're new. I know some of you seasoned guys are really, really good at this, so I'm just talking about some trends that we're seeing lately. When you bring us in, we're assuming, and I know what they say about assuming, I get that, but we're assuming that we have a commitment from the merchant. And I understand that sometimes you have to give the merchant a little something to pique their interest to commit to you. And in the form of doing that is we need to do a lot of if I could, would you. So, okay, so what you're saying, if I could do this, we could move forward then. Great. What I want to do is I want to bring one of my underwriters in, and I always call them an underwriter. I never call my sales manager or agent director or whomever's helping me, I never call them a sales manager. I call them an underwriter. That fits for the industry that we're in. So I want to use the right language with the merchant. So I go, great, let me do this. Let me get the underwriter on the phone with us. And a handful of things that we want to make sure that we do when we do that. Number one is let's make sure that the merchant has a copy of those statements in front of them that we're going to go through. Sometimes the merchant go, yeah, I know them, and then we're going through the statement, but they don't have the statement in front of them. We can't connect the dots for them, and it makes it real difficult. And number two is I always like to make sure that if I'm doing it from afar, is make sure that I have a calculator there for the merchant to use, because a lot of times I'm going to walk them through calculations. So make sure that happens, and then make sure that we're there with paperwork. You want to be there with paperwork. I had a deal recently I was helping an agent on, and it happened to be in my hometown, so I decided to go over to the merchant with the agent, and the agent didn't have paperwork. Went through the whole deal, the agent didn't have paperwork with him, and that's a rookie mistake. So trust me, I rib him plenty about that today. So make sure we have a couple sets of paperwork, because if you're like me, I make mistakes and I can't spell and I write things wrong and things of that nature. So, when they talk about the art of the deal, and there's a lot of different facets to this deal, which some of you seasoned folks out there really, really understand, but especially if you're new, it's really based on the setup. You need to make sure you set it up properly to utilize your tools here, because we'll get on the phone with a merchant in that conference call scenario, but we want you there, so you're going through it with us so you can see exactly what the merchant's getting and understanding, and then we're there and ready to go through paperwork with the merchant. And you guys said it best, tie downs and commitment. You must get the commitment. And it's okay And I know, John and I have done this a lot, and I know some of you other guys have done this. It's okay to not go through numbers if you don't have a commitment. I know it sounds kind of scary, but it's okay to do that. If they're not going to commit to you, can you think of a good reason why we need to go through the statements?
Well, if they're just shopping to try to get the best rate out of their current processor, then why would you give them numbers to help them lower the cost of their current processor and stay there? You're trying to get
You're exactly right. So how do we get around that? And we can brainstorm on that, because these are little things that we're seeing a lot of you guys are running into, because what's happening is that since October's right around the corner and EMB's happening, what you see is like the Visa MasterCard Bs are getting awfully lively, and they're talking to a lot of their merchants today, and they're contacting the merchants today. So now more than ever, they're in current probably conversation with their current provider, because their current provider is trying to upgrade their equipment. So when we go in there and they don't commit, you're exactly right. Why should we give them numbers to arm them to go back to their current processor? So what are some things that we can say when we uncover that? I was always taught growing up, you ever hear the old expression, you screw me once, shame on you. You screw me twice, shame on me? You guys ever hear that before?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure, yeah, we've all heard that, right? So one of the things that we need to uncover with that merchant right away is we need to uncover, and if they're not committing for a reason. So I need to find out why. And there's a process to that. So, well, let me ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, if I come in and give you a better program than what you have today, if they haven't committed to me, what would prevent you from moving forward with me then? Because they're not necessarily going to tell you unless you ask. They go, well, we'll just see what you're going to come back with, and then I'll make my decision. I go, well, let me ask you, what's it based on? What's your decision based on? Is there anything that would hold us back? Well, I want to run it back. I want to go to my current provider and see if they can match it or if they can do better. Okay. So let me ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, do you really want to do business with someone that will only give you a great deal because a competitor walked in the door? Or do you want to do business with someone that gives you a great, fair deal right up front? What would you guys rather do? Because how often do you want to think about your cell phone plan? How often do you want to think about your merchant services plan? How often do you want to think about your Dish Network plan or your DirecTV plan? You don't. You want to make sure that you got a squared, fair deal up front. And then what do business owners want? What do they put their attentions on? What are they focused on doing? It's not their merchant account. What do business owners focus on?
Doing business.
Doing business. So what we need to illustrate to the merchant is, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, I understand that. But let me ask you, wouldn't you much rather not have to worry about whether you got a great deal or not and know already? That's what I'm here to do for you. And clearly, when I come in and do better than the program you have, obviously you've been running, you've been thinking it's a great program, but I come in and give you a better one, so you know I'm doing right by you. You need to illustrate that to them. Because our job, we're kind of salespeople, but we're kind of consultants too. We're a combination of both. And our job is to make sure that we give them a right program, that we keep them forever. And especially some long-termers on the call, you've dealt with attrition before. And some agents have phenomenal attrition. Merchants never leave them. And some agents have a little different level of attrition, and they have a little harder time. But the merchant needs to understand your intent. My intent with you, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, is I want to process for you for the life of your business, for however long you decide to accept credit cards. And this language right here, just so y'all know, I've said probably thousands of times to merchants because it's true. I want to be your processor from now until the end of time, until the day that you go, you know what, I'm retiring, I sold my business, I'm taking the night flight to Rio to eat bonbons on the beach. Whatever you're doing, I want to be your provider until that day. And there's two things I need to do to be that person for you. Can you guys guess what they are? What are the two things we need to do to be their provider from now until the end of time? What are two things we need to do?
Provide customer service.
Customer service, bar none, best ever. And then The second thing is we need to make sure our pricing's right. Aren't those two things we need to do? And clearly, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, by going through this program, I'm going to demonstrate to you that our pricing's right. And I will, and I would hope that by dealing with me for as long as we have, you can tell that I'm very conscious, and I'm going to provide you with probably better customer service than you have today. I mean, isn't that what a working relationship is supposed to be like?
Yes.
Right. So we need to get that through them, and then once we get that commitment, if you need help from your agent director or your underwriter, then bring them in on a conference call scenario and make sure you're with the merchant. When we do that conference call, please make sure you're with the merchant. Because when you ever hear that old expression, strike while the iron's hot, right? So you're on the phone with the merchant, and we're doing a conference call, and you're on the phone with the merchant and your underwriter, and the merchant goes, yeah, I see that. Yep, I want to go ahead and move forward. And then it's like, great, I'll come by tomorrow and do the paperwork. You're not striking while the iron's hot. You're giving that an opportunity to cool. And I've seen it more than once in scenarios just like that, where the agent goes back to write the paperwork or write up the account the next day, and the merchant goes, oh, you know what? Oddly enough, my current provider called me yesterday afternoon, and they just said they'd go ahead and match it. So we want to eliminate as many things going wrong as possible. And anytime you let time lapse between any course of action, you're opening yourself up for a little liability in your deal going south. Does that stuff make sense?
Sure it does. Yep, absolutely.
You know, and I know it's rhetoric for some of you guys that have been here a while, but some of your new guys, you got to understand, you definitely need to strike while the iron's hot, and make sure you get the commitment and get that tied down. So, I don't know, John, if you had anything to add to that. I think you've seen
So I'm clear. So if I'm out there dealing with the merchant, and a couple things came to mind when you're doing that. One is that you really take the time to, you probably come up with those words because you said a lot of words and you kind of crafted it really well. So you really are taking the time to probably understand and to think about, okay, if I just do give this person the numbers without a commitment, what potential is going to happen? Well, let me ask you. Let's say you don't get the commitment from a merchant before going through the numbers. What are the chances that you found over 20 years of doing this? What are the chances that you're going to get the deal if you don't get the commitment before you run the numbers?
Less than 50%.
Okay, exactly. I was thinking exactly the same number. So less than 50, so somewhere between 0 and 50, dependent on all the whole raft of things. Because somewhere between 0 and 50 means some of the times you'll get it without doing a tie down. So if you do a tie down before you run through the numbers, like you went through and pretty eloquently did and crafted, what are the chances you get the deal?
Well, it's going to be 70 to 80 because some deals it's not worth getting. So you got to throw those things in there. So you're going to get it 70 to 80% of the time when you get a tie down.
So on the average, somewhere if you don't ask the tie down and just do the numbers, between 0 and 50 is, let's say, 25%. Is that fair? What's the average you'd say? Is it 25, or am I saying it wrong?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably that.
Okay, so if you don't do the tie down, you just go through like the rest of the world teaches you, just to go through your presentation, handle objections, and then close, you'll get maybe 25%. You'll get 25% of the business that you run through that with.
Right.
Give or take. Okay. And which are numbers when I first got into the Visa MasterCard business, 1989? They said, you talk to 100 businesses, 10 will be interested, 2 won't qualify. You have a shot at 8, and you'll get 2 out of 8. So your numbers are exactly today what they were back in 1989. So if you do a tie down, you're going to get 70. Let's say you said 70 to 80%. So let's go on the short side and say 70%. So we're going from 25% to 70%. So that's almost 3 times more business if you do a tie down. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. It's interesting to actually look at the numbers and go, okay, if I do it the old-fashioned way, I'm gonna make whatever I'm typically used to making in sales, which for most people is less than they would like, from what I've seen. Or if I can somehow figure out to have the confidence to do a tie down and to figure out that little craft and to figure out the words, I can literally increase my income by almost 3 times. And so I was struck by the numbers, and it's interesting because you throw around, well, not you, but we throw around, 0 to 50%, and, you get more if you do it this way. And sometimes it seems like, well, okay, I can just do it the old way and I can be fine because I'm still going to make residuals and it'll stack on. But it stacks on literally 3 times more faster if you kind of go about your craft like you want to be a professional and make professional money. It's an interesting thing because I've seen you do it, and I don't know how many people on this call have, but from my observation, from a lot of years and a lot of people, the way you do it has worked out really pretty well, as opposed to the way that most everybody else in the world does it. It's a fascinating thing to see the amount of business that you can stack on doing it that way. You personally, and other people who don't try to recreate the wheel, but are working on doing, trying to figure out how to, do it like Chuck does, I guess, is for lack of a better way of saying it. Anyway, just an interesting. So having seen it from this perspective, it's an interesting thing to watch how Chuck's sales go, because they almost always go. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. But it's an interesting thing, and I guess if I were new, because I think if I were new, or if I wanted to get more business, how would I use the things that you just talked about? What would I take away? I guess the numbers, and then I'd go, okay, well, how do I do that? How can it? Well, let me ask you, how would I practice doing what you're doing?
Well, a couple things. I think number one is that, we have an expression that always say that, if you stand for nothing, you fall for anything kind of deal. And I've had a lot of times in my career, and I know a lot of other guys in the call I've heard do this, and I've seen them do it, is if, you get statements and you go for that commitment, and the merchant says, well, I can't guarantee that I'll go with you. And I think the mindset, number one, is probably the right mindset going in. The right mindset, in my opinion, is that I need to establish that relationship with the merchant to the point where there's so much more about doing business with someone than just cost. There's so much more to that. So I go in with the mindset of I want to build that relationship and trust with the merchant so thoroughly that cost is kind of like the last thing that we talk about. Like the mindset is that I want them to go, well, hell yeah, I'd be crazy, given the level of understanding that you have about my business, because you've done all the discovery right. You've learned about me personally. You've learned about my business. We've built rapport. We have some commonalities. And so, yeah, well, of course, if you can just get the cost where it should be, a better deal than what I have, or even sometimes maybe just what I have, if I've done all those other things first, cost is the last thing. So when I try to tie them down when I get their statements in my hand, and they go, well, hey, you know what, if I can get you something better, can we go ahead and move forward on this? And they go, well, I'm not really sure. Then there's something else missing on the deal. It's not a cost issue. It's something else. So what haven't I done with that merchant to establish that relationship enough that they'd go, well, of course. I mean, you come in and your rates are the same or better. Of course I'm going to do business with you because everything else makes sense. So I need to uncover that. And if I can't uncover that and they're kind of closed, because you know how it is. We always get the closed customer, and I get that. People are closed off. They're skeptical, or they're just whatever they are. Then I won't go through the numbers. I go, well, you know what? Let's do this. I have these. I have a copy of these. And when you're ready to get a better program for yourself, reach out to me, and then I can get some numbers crunched for you. That's called the takeaway. So I'll do that. And what happens, what I find often in the takeaway is 50% of the time, they go, well, you know what? All right, just give me something better, and I could do this. And then 50% of the time, they still won't commit, and I won't do the numbers. And if they get kind of feisty with me, And they're like, well, why aren't you, it's all based on, then I need to remind them. I go, look, let me ask you. And then I relate it to them. You sell widgets, and I just happen to know that I can get a widget down the street for 10% less than you sell the widget for. Let me ask you, why would I buy my widget here? You ever hear the question? It's such a silly question because words are words, but actions can demonstrate. You don't know how good someone is until shit goes wrong, I guess. But when you're talking with them, you ever talk to a customer? They go, "Well, what makes your company different than anyone else's company?" You ever get that question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. Oh, of course. Well, what makes you different? And you know what really makes you different? And I go, look, I could probably sit here and tell you anything you wanted to hear, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant. But bottom line is, I would hope that you can tell by the way that we've gone about this, the way that I have a complete understanding of how you do business, how in the sense of how your merchant account relates to how you do business. We take time to learn your business and learn what is really, because sometimes the best program doesn't necessarily mean that I'm 5 cents a click cheaper. It means that I've set you up a way to do your business when it comes to your merchant account that's more effective for you. Therefore, maybe it's more efficient so you can focus on other things. Maybe it's more effective in that you get your money quicker. There's a lot of other attributes to that. And then I immediately go into, so I mean, obviously you're not the only one that sells widgets, right? And they go, well, of course. And I go, well, let me ask you. I'm just curious because what do you say to your customers when they ask you that? And when it's funny when you ask them that, they'll give you the answer, and you'll be able to see how polished it is, and you'll be able to see oftentimes they go, well, geez, I never really and then I help fill in the blanks for them. Well, from what I see, just dealing with you up to this point, is that you obviously take a little different vested interest in your widgets and what you offer your clients. Well, of course I do. Exactly. So the same things that are important to you offering your customer are the same things that I want to offer you. I mean, you notice I just didn't come in here and regurgitate a rate, right? Right. Because how could I prescribe, if you called a doctor and they just prescribe something to you without seeing you, wouldn't that give you a reason for pause? Wouldn't you go, they didn't even take the time to give me a physical or give me a, what do you call it when you go to the doctor, they give you an exam. They didn't even do anything. They just automatically assumed that this is what I needed. Wouldn't that worry you, especially before something you popped in your mouth and swallowed? You go, geez, you didn't even take the time to figure out what I had going on. You just thought this was the answer. So you have to relate. These are concepts that I think get lost a lot today. And then when you can bring those concepts to a merchant so they understand that, then what you find is you're going to connect with the merchant on a completely different level. And they're going to see that you clearly understand what it takes to be successful in business, is because that's what they're trying to do. Does that concept make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And it should, and I know it's you have to be patiently aggressive or aggressive patiently or something like that. I don't know how you want to say it, but you've got to take the time to articulate that to the merchant. In the easiest way,
Charmingly aggressive.
I love, Cam always has it right, charmingly aggressive. That's exactly what you have to be. You have to be charmingly aggressive. And when you're new, and I know this is new language for a lot of folks, it's like, yeah, I understand that, but it's kind of hard for me to talk about that because it's new in this for me. And the easiest way to get the language is ask the merchant. Well, let me ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, you're not the only one that sells widgets, right? No. Well, let me ask you, because you've posed a great question, and I understand where your concerns are coming from, but, what makes your widgets better than Don's widgets down the street? And the answer they give you is what's important to them. So when they tell you what's important to them, what do you want to talk about?
Important to them. That which they mentioned.
Yeah, what's important to them. And go, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Merchant, you're exactly right. And that's how I conduct my business, is I feel the same way. And understand, I want you to understand my intent. My intent is for however long you accept credit cards at your business, I want to be your provider. And let me ask you, if I wasn't giving you a phenomenal deal, what are the odds that you'd stick with me forever? If I wasn't giving you good customer service, what are the odds that you would stick with me forever? And they'll tell you, well, it wouldn't happen. Right. And let me ask you, if your customers quit buying from you, do you still make money?
Nope.
You know what happens when my customers quit buying from me? I quit making money too. So understand, this is beneficial for both of us, because I can be here to give you the level of service that you deserve. And when you can articulate that to them, then the cost or what numbers you're going to come in with become less of an issue. Yeah, sure, I know you still want a little better deal than what you had before, but we both are on the same page of what it means to have a successful working relationship together. Because that's how commerce is done. I had an agent this weekend, she called me and she goes, hey, I'm talking to this merchant, and she was giving me the lowdown on it, and she can't get the statements until today. And the merchant said to her, he goes, you know what, we all got to help each other out, right? There's someone that understands. Look, we all got to help each other out. That's just part of the deal. That's how businesses run. You help me, I help you. You drive customers to me, I drive customers to you. We do business together. That's how commerce works. It's always worked that way. So make sure that they understand that you understand that. Anyway, concepts, I know. Get that in your repertoire. Practice the stuff. And if you're not sure what to take, just take the new way until you get more and more comfortable. Just ask the merchant what separates them from the competition. Because you know what most salespeople don't ask the merchant? That question. And when you do ask the merchant, you're showing the merchant that you're taking a different interest in their business than here. I want to regurgitate a rate, slam a terminal in here, kiss you on the cheek, and never talk to you again. That can't be your MO. If you follow our model, that can't be your MO, because our MO is build a nice portfolio that has a lot of merchants in it, that has very low attrition rate, and generating a lot of revenue for you. So we want to make sure that we do all the right steps up front to build that for you, and then you don't have you have a lot less worries. It's they always say I'd much rather be unhappy with money than unhappy without it. So, or whatever, we could be happy, but I'm just saying, money's not the cure-all, but life is a lot easier when you have that constant cash flow of your portfolio. So, anyway, I'm going to turn it over and see, is there anything else that you guys wanted to touch base on today? We got 1 week left of the month. Definitely want to take it to the best we can. Is there anything else or questions, hurdles, anything you guys are running into?
This is Greg in Chicago. How you doing this morning?
Good. How are you, man?
Fantastic. I got two quick questions for you. I've got a merchant that I'm talking to, one of my clients, and he has two restaurants. One of them has Clover in. They got Clover maybe about a year ago, and that's a new restaurant he opened up. Now, his existing restaurant, he needs to upgrade.
Okay.
However, when I talked to his manager at the other restaurant loves Clover. But when I talked to him, he said he didn't like Clover. And I'm kind of trying to understand what he was saying to me. He said the reason that he doesn't like it is because he has to close everything at the end of the day. So I'm thinking he's talking about the batch closing for the processing, the manual close where that's all done at the end of the day.
Sure, but you have to do that with any piece of equipment.
Yeah. Okay, so is that set up, I mean, between the manual and the automatic, is Clover like just exclusively he has to do that manually, or is that just something?
Yeah. I think I know where you're headed. And when you have I guess, what kind of restaurant is it? Does he have tip option?
It's fast food restaurant. And the one that he's in now, he has the Sam's 4 POS system that he's using there, and he hasn't upgraded, but he put Clover in the other restaurant. So I'm looking to see if he's going to upgrade and put it in his main restaurant, which is the older restaurant. You know, that was the only issue he brought up about Clover. He said, you know, I don't like Clover because I have to close everything at the end of the day. So, I mean, he's obviously doing it differently at the other restaurant.
Right. Well, you know what, that's going to take a little back and forth because, you know, on a typical restaurant where you have tips, you have to manually close because you have to add in the tip amounts at the end of the night.
He doesn't do tips. This is fast food.
Right.
No.
So it's quick serve. So I'm not sure on a quick serve, and that would be something we'd find out. I'm sure that's a good question because I know on a terminal quick serve, I do have merchants on quick serve because he has small ticket, I'd imagine, if it's a fast food joint, and they do have auto close. So we'd have to check on the Clover piece to see if that's something that you can build in. And someone else here may have dealt with that on a retailer, even if it does auto close or not.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to check
Chuck, I was talking with Clover Tech Support this morning, installing a Mini, and they said that Mini or that none of the products that they had would auto close. All of it you had to do manually.
Yeah, all the Clover stuff you have to do manually. Okay. Well, there's our answer. So we need to figure out a solution, or what we need to do is we need to bring in some other value to the Clover that it makes sense to manually close at the end of the night. And I'd be curious what at his restaurant he's using it. I'd be curious of what all does he use the Clover for? Is it purely just a point of sale, or does he use it for time clock? We need some back and forth. So we need to get on the phone with your agent director and the merchant and go, look, we just want to make sure we're going down the right path with you. Is he using the Clover to its ability, or is he just using it just to process the credit card? Because we might be able to bring in things to him that he goes, you know what, it's worth closing it at the end of the night. You know, this will shoot. And imagine at a fast food joint. You know, imagine you probably have a lot of younger guys working, kids working for you. You know, they don't know their schedule. They don't show up on time, you know. But the time clock piece might be an added benefit that he goes, you know what, it's worth it. It makes sense. So,
well, you know, that's one of the directions I was going in with him. And my assumption from what I know about the customer is that they're not really using it to their capacity. So, you know, just, you know, I've been in and out of the facility. However, and that was a conversation I wanted to have with him as far as bringing it into the other location. But when he said that, I just kind of interrupted that. I've got a meeting with him to get his statements on Wednesday, so just wanted to get some insight. And one more question. I have another client of mine that I'm meeting with today. He's got 4 restaurants. They just started upgrading, and he's got a partner. So my relationship is with the owner that's in the flagship restaurant. They just started the process of upgrading. I've been trying to get an appointment with him for 2 weeks and just got to see him last week. They got a system, and he doesn't have all the particulars, but it was installed in one of the other restaurants, and it has the AI data stand, and it looks like it's just a iPad that's on that stand that they're using. When I met with him Friday, I showed him the Clover video, so he's very much interested in that, and he's almost closing on this deal for the to put that system in his store. He got the cables in the store. He showed me the cables, but he hasn't closed the deal, so he said he's going to hold off until he talks to me today. I told him I'm going to get my underwriting department on it, and we're going to see what we can do for him. You know, I think, you know, from talking with him, his main interest is inventory control, so that's ideal for Clover, and, you know, getting a good rate, and he said that the company he's working with, they did drop some of the fees for him when they brought the new package to him. So that in mind, I just wanted some insight on, where to go with this. And, of course, the obvious is we come in with a better rate, and then the other guys come back and try to negotiate off of that. So, because he's almost, like I say, done on that. He's closed in one of the stores, and I don't know if I don't think he's closed on all three of them, but one is done. They have the system in. So just wanted some insight on where to go, how to proceed with that.
Well, I think it's probably a lot of what we just talked about a few minutes ago. Yeah, we're going to get the cost in line, and we're going to get what you need in these things, but let's make sure that we want to be, quote unquote, in business bed together. Let's make sure, look, I'm your guy, and I need to establish that relationship and trust with him. And obviously you've done a decent job of that already, because he's willing to hold off to see what makes sense. So,
well, he knows me. He's been a client of mine for about 8 years now. So,
well, there you have it. I mean, enough said. Enough said right there. It's like, look, you know me. We've been doing business together for 8 years. I understand it, and I wouldn't go in trying to beat up the other guy's rate. I would go in and show the features that benefit him with the program, and then I'd come in real close, probably to the same rate. Go, look, the rates are great, but here's what some other benefits that we can bring to the table for you. And the biggest one is you're doing business with someone whom you've known for 8 years, and who you know is not going anywhere. You don't know these guys. Here today, gone to Maui. I mean, I've been here for 8 years. Guess where I'm going to be the next 8 years? Right here, working with you, just like I have been. So I would base it way more on relationship than anything else.
Right.
So, good question. Any other questions or hurdles, guys, before we go? No? All right, let's have a great end of the month. Having a great end of the month oftentimes sets up your next month for a phenomenal month. So let's make sure we get with your agent director if you have things hanging out there. And you know what? One of the things to always remember when you have things hanging out there is when I go back to that merchant to either try to get the deal closed or try to get it finalized or whatever I'm trying to do, one of the most important things is I need to go back to them with something new. So that's where, especially when you're new in this gig, so to speak, it's oftentimes, well, what can I go back to them with something new? Because they haven't moved on the information they have now, so that means I need to do something a little bit different. So get with your agent director and brainstorm on that stuff and develop, put together a strategy or plan to get in there with something new and get these things closed. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. Tomorrow we have a case study call at noon. John's going to be doing it. You'll be there at noon tomorrow, right, John?
Yep, I'll be there.
Yep. All right, he'll be there. So he'll run through the case study call. And then next week, same time, same place, guys.